morning, grade 11s. For those of you that have not been at school during this lockdown period, I thought I would do a quick video for you just to explain the phases of photosynthesis. And so this was one of the things that we left for photosynthesis because it's quite complex, so I thought I'd quickly make you guys a video. So let's talk about the phases of photosynthesis. So we've got photosynthesis. Photosynthesis, okay? The first thing we have to have an understanding of is, before we get into photosynthesis, is something referred to as an energy carrier molecule. Now this molecule that we have in life sciences is a molecule that has the ability to trap energy. And it traps the energy in the last bond of a phosphate molecule. Okay, and this molecule is called ATP. Now ATP stands for adenosine triphosphate. Adenosine triphosphate. And so the word tri means three. And so what we have on this molecule is basically an adenine, which you don't need to worry about what that is and how that works, plus three phosphate atoms. Okay. Now these phosphate atoms are bonded together, and in this last bond over here, we have a storage of energy. Okay? So what this molecule has the ability to do is basically to be transported or transferred to a location that requires energy. So let's say at the cell membrane, or anywhere where it doesn't necessarily even have to be at the cell membrane. It can be, so let's remove that, just anywhere where we need energy. So we have an energy requirement, okay? And what it can do is it can break off a bond in that last phosphate molecule. So it can become adenosine, so our adenine, and then we have two phosphates, and when that bond breaks, there's a release of energy. So in other words, this bond has now broken, and what is being released? Energy. Okay? And this is the biological energy molecule. It has the ability to transport energy or transfer energy for life processes. And so what we see is we've got adenosine diphosphate. So this is adenosine di, meaning two, phosphate. Okay, because now there's only two phosphates plus a phosphate. Okay, so adenosine triphosphate can be transported somewhere. The bond in that last phosphate molecule, that bond over there, can break. As it breaks, it releases energy, and that can then do work, can be used for whatever work is required. Okay? And then what can happen is we can take this adenosine diphosphate plus its phosphate, and it can be converted back into adenosine triphosphate using a source of energy. Okay, a source of energy. So we can use a source of energy, and in the case of photosynthesis, that source of energy is going to be a little bit of light. Now in photosynthesis, we don't use too much. We're not able to make a lot of ATPs like this, but enough for the process to actually happen. And so when we get light, we can use the light to take ADP, bond that phosphate back, so we can bond it back, forming ATP, okay? So adenosine diphosphate plus its phosphate molecule becomes adenosine triphosphate. And in this last bond over here, we have a storage of energy. Okay, so grade 11s, that's just an understanding of this molecule called ATP. Now we're going to look at the process of photosynthesis. So let me take this off the board. So this is just understanding an energy carrier molecule. Now we need to look at the process of photosynthesis. Okay, so the process of photosynthesis is divided into two phases. The light phase, which is also called the light-dependent phase, and the dark phase. And it's not that the dark phase has to happen in the dark. It's just that the dark phase doesn't need light to happen. Okay? So we have, if we basically just take our board, I'm going to divide it into two. I'm going to put on this side the light phase, and everything that happens in the light phase. And on this side, I'm going to put the dark phase. This phase is also called the light independent phase. In other words, it happens without light. The light independent phase, called the dark phase. It can also be called the Kelvin cycle. Okay. So, in order to understand where these processes happen, let's give a quick recap of the structure of the chloroplast. Remember, grade 11th, that photosynthesis happens in the chloroplast. So where this phase is actually happening is inside the chloroplast. And the chloroplast is an oval organelle. It has a double membrane. Sorry if you can hear people laughing, we're at school, so it has a double membrane. And then it has these stacks of structures, of membrane-bound structures. Each one of these is called a thylakoid. Okay? The full stack is called the grana. And these grana are connected by intergrana. And we have this round substance stuff over here, which is called the stroma. Okay, so we've got the grana, we've got the stroma, basically two areas of the chloroplast. Okay, and so the first phase of photosynthesis, the light phase, happens in the grana. So the light phase happens in the grana, and the reason it happens in the grana is because the grana has chlorophyll, and that chlorophyll is used to absorb light. And so, as you can guess from the name of the phase, light is going to be an essential requirement. So let's get into this specific phase and what happens with the light. What do we need the light for? So how does it work? So in the grana, we have light. Light is a source of radiant energy. Radiant energy. And that radiant energy is used in two ways. The first, number one, it's used in a process called photolysis. Now, photo meaning the light particles, and lysis meaning to split. Okay? So the first thing we're going to do with this radiant energy is we're going to do a process called photolysis. And what exactly are we splitting? A water molecule, H2O. Remember, one of the major things that we use in photosynthesis is water. And so we use this radiant energy to split water into high energy hydrogen atoms and into oxygen. Okay, now I know a water molecule only has one oxygen. The oxygen will find another oxygen and bond together to form O2. The oxygen, this is going to be released as a byproduct. Okay, so there is our release of oxygen. So oxygen is released in the phase, the light phase, from the grana. So we're going to get a byproduct of O2 being released. Okay? We've taken our water, we've used light, and we've split it. And we've made these high energy hydrogen atoms. Okay? The second thing that we do with this radiant energy, this light, so number 2 that we do, okay, is we take ADP plus a phosphate, which is what I just spoke to you about now, so adenosine diphosphate plus its phosphate. We use a little bit of the light energy. Remember, this is light energy. And we make ATP. What is ATP? It's the biological storage of energy. So it's the biological storage of energy. So we have ADP plus a phosphate makes ATP. Okay, so that's what happens in the light phase. Those are the 2 things we do. We do number 1, photolysis. We split a water molecule. We use this radiant energy to split a water molecule into high energy hydrogen atoms and into oxygen. The oxygen is released as a byproduct from the ground and will be released by the plant. We also take this energy and we make ATP. How do we make ATP? Well, using an ADP, adenosine diphosphate, plus a phosphate. So we're adding that phosphate, and when we add that phosphate, we basically create a storage of energy. And we need a bit of radiant energy to do that. So we've made our ATP. Now, these 2 things, the hydrogen that we have, remember the oxygen is released as a byproduct, the hydrogen and the ATP need to be transported from the grana into the stroma. In other words, we need to get them into here. Now, ATP has no problem. ATP can transport across here without any issues. Okay? ATP moves across, but your hydrogen atom, or your high energized hydrogen atoms, can't. They need a transport molecule. And that transport molecule goes by the name of NADP. NADP. What do you say this is? Guys, it doesn't matter. You don't need to know what it is. What you need to know is it's called NADP. It's like saying, I need an Uber. Okay? I need an Uber. My Uber comes, picks me up, and it's going to take me to where I want to be. Okay? I don't want to be here at home. I want to go to the movies. And so I need my Uber to do that. And so what NADP does is it comes, picks up my hydrogens, and becomes NADPH+. So it's picking up our hydrogens, and it is going to transport those hydrogens over here, drop them off. So we are transporting our hydrogens out of the grana into the stroma by NADPH+, into the stroma. Because where is the dark phase happening? The dark phase is happening in the stroma. Okay, in the stroma. And so NADP comes along, NADPH+, drops off its hydrogens, and then just like an Uber, guys, once you've dropped off the people, you're not going to go and not pick up anybody else. It's going to go back. DP. It's going to go back and pick up some more hydrogens and transport them back here. So we've got our light phase, we've made our hydrogens, our oxygen is released as a byproduct, our hydrogen has been transported to the dark phase, our hydrogen is transported by a molecule called NADP, NADPH+, hydrogen gets dropped off here. Got a little bit of energy, ATP, and we have to finish the last step. Now grade 11s. This dark phase is much more complicated and much more specific than what I'm going to explain to you and what you need to know. All you need to know in this specific phase is that we have our high energy hydrogen atoms, and those hydrogen atoms come from the light phase by the splitting of water, and we're going to combine it with carbon dioxide. Remember, guys, that carbon dioxide is the other requirement for this process. So we take our hydrogen, we combine it with our carbon dioxide, and we produce glucose, C6H12O. O6, which is glucose. In order for that process to happen, we need energy. And so that ATP is going to break that bond in that last phosphate, become ADP plus a phosphate, and that energy that is released is going to be used for this process. And so we have our hydrogen, we combine it with our carbons in a cycle, which is why it's called the Calvin cycle. And I don't expect you to know the complexities of it, just that it is more complex than simply this, okay? I'm breaking it simply down. So we use the energy, and that's going to make glucose, C6H12O6. The the ADP plus the phosphate go back to get some more energy to make more ATP. And that, grade 11s, is the light phase and the dark phase. Let's give you our full chemical equation for photosynthesis just very quickly. To make one molecule of glucose, we need 6 H2O plus 6 CO2, and it's going to give you C6H12O6, and you release 6 molecules of water. Okay? So here's the thing. This is used in the light phase, and that is released in the light phase. This is used in the dark phase, and this is released in the dark phase. And so we've used all the requirements. We must have light in order for this process to happen. So radiant energy is required, okay? And that is going to make one molecule of glucose. Okay, grade 11s. That glucose can then be used to produce other organic molecules, a whole bunch of things, starch and cellulose and lipids and proteins even. It can be converted. So we use this glucose. This is a basic building block of all life molecules, and glucose ultimately is stored as starch. Stored as starch, okay? And so when we test for photosynthesis, we test for the presence of starch. And so that's what I did today, grade 11s. I spoke about the testing, the practical work with it, but I wanted to just give you a video showing you the light phase and the dark phase, happening in the corona, happening in the stroma. What is required? Photolysis and energy production. Hydrogen gets transported by this molecule called NADP, picks up hydrogen, transports it here, drops it off. Hydrogen plus our carbon dioxide, using energy that we made in the light phase in the form of ATP, using that energy to make glucose. And grade 11s, that's it from me. Cool guys, that's photosynthesis. Be good, stay safe, and I'll see you soon.